Paxton Lynch wins the Orlando job over Quentin Dormady in training camp. We're going to talk to Dormady here coming up next. They both played in the week 1 loss, but Dormady was then accused of selling the playbook. So he was not with the team weeks 2 through 4, or 2 through 5. That was a waste of pretty much the entire half the season for the Guardians as they tried to investigate this. Paxton Lynch continued to get smoked behind a Swiss cheese offensive line. 3 weeks later, Quentin Dormady is cleared. Lynch gets benched and traded to San Antonio. So that's why this is the Paxton Lynch Bowl. Will he start? We'll see. Jack Cohen hurt his ankle. Reed Sinnett broke his foot. Kurt Bankert cracked his ribs. So maybe it would only be right for the Brahmas to start Paxton Lynch here and give their 5th quarterback of the season a try. Why not? What do you got to lose? We saw what happened when players traded in the season, go to their old teams. See what happens? TJ Stormont. Trade it from DC to Orlando. Ends up beating DC. Maybe that's the effect that they need for Paxton Lynch. So let's look at the San Antonio offense. Realistically, like I said, 3 quarterback options going into this week. Jack Cohn really battled last week. Have to give him that. Jawan Pass technically 1-0 as a starting quarterback, although they didn't score an offensive touchdown against Arlington in the game he won. Paxton Lynch hasn't won a game as a starting quarterback all season. In fact, I mentioned Orlando probably would have topped Vegas back in week 5 if they rolled with Dormady. They put him in the second quarter. If they started him, I bet they win that game. It could get interesting if we see Dormady versus Lynch. You kind of put a silver lining on a game that's not very exciting. Actually, Paxton back in his old college number, 12. Does that get him his swagger back if he ends up starting? The run game was better last week for San Antonio. We talked about the 20 yards they mustered against Vegas in week 7. Much better this time around. They improved almost 130 on the ground versus Houston. A lot of that was Jaquez Patrick eating up. He had 16 carries, 96 yards, and a score. By far his best effort all season. Thought he ran really hard. And he was effective in the pass game as well. Landon Akers, 5 catches, 62 yards for the Brahmas. They ran 72 plays on Sunday, which was 21 more than Houston ran, and probably their high on the season. Statistically, they've done way worse than the game they put together against Houston. One of their better efforts, especially in week 5, 6, and 7. San Antonio was completely lifeless offensively. At least they built a little bit of momentum by tying this game, sending it to overtime, although they couldn't finish it. This Orlando pass defense is a little susceptible. I don't have any faith in the Brahmas to necessarily repeat what they did in week 2 and the footage we just showed you and drop 30. In fact, only 23 or 24 of those were offensive points because they blocked the punt and returned it for a touchdown back then. So I'd like to lean the under, but the game scares me a little bit because Orlando's 6-2 to the over. And the XFL has this thing dating all the way back to 2020 where when you get 2 teams at the bottom of the standings together, you have this random explosive game. We saw it with Vegas and Orlando. Wasn't that 0-4 or 0-5 teams going against each other? And there was 67 total points, which is damn near close to our highest total of the season. It rivaled Seattle, DC last week. Back in 2020, we saw it with the LA Wildcats and Tampa Bay Vipers. They played like a 41-34 game. They were the worst 2 teams in the league in the standings. So that's what scares me a little bit. Do we get that random offensive shootout? That's why I won't make the under my best bet, although San Antonio is 1-7 to the over. Yikes. They did cover last week, so get another win against the number there. Let's look at the Orlando offense. A few things to keep an eye on injury-wise. The San Antonio secondary had Ryan Lewis and Jack Corner, both to the IR. They are both starters. Now, on Orlando, XFL receiving leader Cody Latimer has not practiced this week with a knee injury. So we await his status. Kind of checkmate there. You get Latimer, who's been Dormady's security blanket all season, actually even dating back to Paxton Lynch. Guy's 560 receiving yards this year, tops in the league. If you lose him, and his, every week seems to be 8 catches for 60, 7 catches for 50. He'll have a big game, 11 catches for 120, something like that. That's tough to replace a guy like that. Jordan Thomas is a guy I kind of look to step up in that hybrid wide receiver tight end role that Orlando rolls with in this spread offense. But they have to take care of the football. San Antonio, very opportunistic with the turnovers. We saw it against Houston, 2 late game situations. Remember, back in, was it week 4? Seattle and San Antonio, 15-6 game. Dragons up 9 down the stretch. Danucci throws a pick, made it a game. Luckily, their defense held. Same exact situation. Mirror image. Houston last week, up 15-6. Same offense. June Jones, AJ Smith. You think they would have learned from each other? Houston up 15-6. 3 minutes left in the game. Interception. This time, San Antonio capitalized and scored and took it to overtime. So you cannot force balls against this secondary, even with those 2 guys out. They still have some studs back there. Barco's a phenomenal player. Cam Kelly, another one. Dormady, I thought, took a step back in week 8, cooled off a little bit, but still threw the ball 43 times. And again, they didn't do a good job protecting him, so not all that's on him. He had 303 yards passing. Delonte Scott will tee off on that offensive line if they don't figure it out up front, and they have some other dogs in there. Jordan Williams, another guy you got to keep an eye on for the San Antonio defense. This is tough. I went back and forth on this one. In fact, I changed it pretty much right before the show. I'm going Orlando. Cody Latimer potentially being out scares me away. And this is one of the few times all season where I'm actually going against my own power poll. And I have San Antonio at 7, Orlando at 8. I think Orlando splits the series here. Remember, they were beaten pretty badly back in week 2, and they weren't happy about that. They've cleaned up some of the special teams issues that they've had. Borregales has been a serviceable kicker. Punt game could use a little help, but you see their punt coverage making some big plays with Dedrick Thomas last week. So this Orlando offensive line, it really scares me. I think you get, a game here into the mid-30s. If you like the under, go for it. But again, watch for that explosive game randomly. Zook, we were more confident in Orlando going into, I guess, week 8 than we were coming out of it. They took a pretty big drop-off. In fact, I put them at 6, dropped them to 8. Kind of a big difference when you look at the up and down of this season. But are they back to old Lando? Is this a team you want to fade now going forward?
I went back and forth as well. I couldn't pick this game. I ended up just picking it because San Antonio is favored. Yeah. I'm just going to agree with Vegas.
Right? Yeah.
I think I'd rather gamble on croquet in the backyard. I mean,
let's play 1,000 pickup sticks and bet on that. I mean, I'd rather. Listen, we're going to watch every game, right? This is what we do. We love the XFL. And there could be some interesting storylines here, like if Paxton Lynch gets to play against Dormady. That's interesting.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not going to say I'm not going to watch it.
How do you bet on it, right?
I don't want to bet on it. You're going to hear me, like, almost every game this week. Like, I want no parts of it.
Yeah. You want to think the no-brainer here is to take the under, considering San Antonio 1-7 to the over, and they kind of ugly the game up. I've said all year, San Antonio Brahmas are the Iowa Hawkeyes of the XFL. They play this brand of football where they muck it up. They ugly it up. They play great defense. They keep these games low scoring, and they give themselves a chance at the end. In some games, it came back to bite them. St. Louis week 1, that kind of changed the whole course of their season. If they're able to fend off that comeback, get a win over A.J. McCarron and the Battlehawks, we might be talking about a playoff team here. That sunk them pretty badly week 1, and it just proves in this league with the high-flying passing offenses, you cannot muck it up and expect to score 16 points like they did against Arlington with no offensive touchdowns and win a game. I think Orlando's capable of getting into the 20s here.
Now that I see Mike's pick, I should have went the other way.
Well, he kind of loves the Brahmas, especially when I told him that Paxton Lynch may be starting.
Right.
That's his guy, right?